All right, all right, all right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to today's video. I am Striker, aka Francisco Munoz. For any of you that are new to the channel, I am a CPA located in Deep South Texas who is a crypto enthusiast, sports fanatic, and your avid gamer. Started a professional gaming career back in 2006 and rolled it over into what we're doing now, exploring the metaverse with Strike Team Games. I would appreciate it if any of you that are new to the channel, if you enjoyed today's video on commentary, please go ahead and hit that sub button and give me a like. Today we're going to be going over an interview between Caleb Applegate, the COO of Enjin, and Cliff Cawley, the CEO of Cobit Labs and the developer of Lost Relics. For any of you that may not be familiar, Enjin is a leading gaming platform in cryptocurrency right now that is currently making a transition over to the Polkadot network, winning one of those parachain slots that recently became available. So today we're going to go ahead and be commenting over the Enjin Room podcast, which obviously is a conversation between these two, both a developer operating within the Enjin ecospace and with the chief operating officer. So without further ado, I'll be giving you my feedback. Let's get the show on the road, shall we? Here we go.
From a gamer's perspective, you can invest all your time into playing a game and forget about like that blockchain is there and you can make money and all that kind of thing. Just playing a game. You've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours, and at the end of it, you go, oh, you know what? It's been like 3 years playing this. I'm kind of done. I'm just going to leave. What about if there was also an option for you to say, well, I've amassed like a lot of stuff. Why can't I just sell that?
Blockchain ownership, baby.
In any of the other games, unless maybe there's a black market or something where you're open to fraud and that kind of stuff. But, if there was a way to do that, like, why is that a bad thing?
Starting off strong, going over a little bit of the benefits of blockchain ownership and the NFT revolution. Here we go, Enjin.io.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Enjin Room. I'm Caleb Applegate, and I'm Enjin's Chief Operating Officer. You may not know this about me, but outside of Enjin, I've actually been an advisor to top companies in the retail and gaming spaces, a Hollywood filmmaker, and a co-owner of one of the largest Minecraft gaming servers in the world. Now, at Enjin, we're passionate
Didn't know
about
that one about the
transformative potential of NFTs
server
and the evolving metaverse. Each week, I'll be introducing you to an innovative project who is building at the forefront of blockchain technology. Now, I'm really excited about today's guests. I'm joined by Cliff Cawley, who I recently had the pleasure of chatting with during a roundtable at the VentureBeat Metaverse Summit. Cliff is the founder of Cobit Labs and the developer of Lost Relics.
Just a real quick note there, guys. If any one of you have not checked out, and you're obviously a crypto evangelist, if you haven't checked out the VentureBeats conference that was held probably about a month or two ago, highly recommend it. 8 hours a day of in-depth cryptocurrency, Web3 applications in the gaming space and across media. Gotta highly recommend it.
A free-to-play action-adventure RPG. Lost Relics has amassed a waitlist of over 130,000 players under his direction, with zero signs of slowing down. Cliff, I'm pumped. Welcome to the Enjin Room.
Hey, Caleb. Thanks for having me. Hey,
everyone. Here we go.
Now, one of the first things that I do before we kind of dig into learning more about Lost Relics and your thoughts on the NFT space and the metaverse, I want to hear your story, man. For our listeners, like give us your backstory. What got you to the point of building Lost Relics? I want to hear about you.
Backstory is so important in the crypto space.
I was working in the video games industry for about 12 years, and that ended up falling apart here in Australia when the GFC happened in the US.
I'm going to have to research that one.
And I ended up working for a friend's company, which was in the blockchain space called Referium. And we ended up doing rewards, blockchain rewards, basically for streaming and that kind of thing. Gotcha. When that ended, probably around halfway through that, I was keeping an eye on Enjin, and I sort of seen that you released SDKs and a few other things, or gave access to early adopters, and I missed out for that first.
The background from the Lost Relics game, by the way.
You guys had opened up the second round of early adopters, so I jumped in on that. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I haven't got anything else to do right now. How about I start working on a new game? And that's kind of when Lost Relics was born.
Yeah, that's really important to know, especially for you Lost Relics fans out there. The fact that that Cobit Labs came in on the second jump start of the early adopters program has been pretty important in the past, because we've seen how Enjin has supported the first round of early adopters in order, and then followed by the second round of early adopters. That may be something that may be changing when we go over to Polkadot. So we're gonna be keeping an eye on that for sure.
That's awesome. And this was back when, 2018, 2019?
Yeah, 2019. I think it was
3+ years now.
March was when I started releasing publicly, but I think probably in January was when I was already trying to get my foot in the door with Enjin and get on the early adopters list.
Happy 3-year anniversary.
I knew you were early because you've been part of the Enjin ecosystem for about 3 years now. So since 2019. I want to hear more about Lost Relics. So you started developing this. What do you have today? You have some clips, you've prepared some things. I want to see this.
Yeah, sure. I mean, let's just switch to some of the early gameplay. So you can see that around in the background there. This was pretty much how things launched.
A little bit early for my experience. I started with Lost Relics in 2020.
I joined Enjin. I was already previously working on the prototype for this. You could just run around the dungeon, attack monsters, open chests, and collect items. And so it was very arcadey in its style. You were just
inventory
just running
slots.
this one dungeon, which was randomly generated. And as you can see in the footage there, just attacking various monsters of different sizes and strengths and that kind of stuff. So it was basically just the first version. And over time, that's ended up transitioning and moving around, and due to player feedback and the community feedback, they've kind of driven it away a little bit from more of the arcade style and more into RPG.
Yeah.
So now you can do things like, this is the current footage behind me now. Yeah, you can see the environments have been upgraded. There's outdoors and indoors.
Some of these are new
deserts and
locations.
And that kind of thing.
This for sure is brand new.
And there's various different weapons with effects. There's relics with effects as well that give you power-ups. There's shops in the store which you can go and buy things to, make potions and that kind of thing. You can craft items, so you can craft weapons, which are just virtual.
Looks like the lighting effect there's going to be important for that dungeon.
Create potions in order to use like health and energy potions for you to help survivability. And you can do forging and fishing and mining and a bunch of stuff. So there's a lot of skills that you can level up. And as you do those, you kind of level up and it kind of gives you that RPG experience. But I've also tried to still keep in there some of the arcade feel. So the combat is very arcadey. And a lot of the movement and stuff is very arcadey.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting to cover. And I think it's a very important feature too, because it does sound like from very early on, Cliff was making, adaptations to the game based on community feedback, right? And we've seen in cryptocurrency and different other metaverses as they've been built out, the importance of building a strong and robust community that is then in turn helping the project itself succeed in moving into the future. So I think, hey, that's got to be one of the hardest things to do, right? It's one thing to be building a game based off of your idea. It's another one to be building it as you're receiving feedback, always continuously iterating and making sure that the project continues moving forward rather than getting stagnant. So here we go.
So I can see that. So this is familiar gameplay, right? User experience is a hurdle, as you and I both know, when it comes to blockchain. Looking at this player experience, this does feel really, really normal. Like, I'm not seeing anything here that screams blockchain. So talk to me about how you incorporated blockchain technology and kind of synthesize that with the usual familiar game mechanics and user experience.
Yeah, so I mean,
great question.
I kind of have taken it from trying to do that crossover. So rather than just going full on blockchain like a card game, which is, a lot of the blockchain stuff is very turn-based these days. I wanted to go from a different angle where it's all real time, and kind of remove some of that. And there's some issues with blockchain, the speed of transactions and that kind of thing, that you can't do certain things quickly and in real time. Obviously, back then there wasn't. These days, it's getting better and better. But so in order to do that, a lot of my blockchain integration was based on the items themselves. So you would run adventures, drop blockchain items, or have a chance to, or drop other items and use those in order to progress towards earning a blockchain reward instead. And that way, in that regard, I could then send it later on. You know, it doesn't matter about the lag on it. You just get it later on and be credited to your account.
So if I'm a new player and I sign in, I'm not immediately met with, this is a blockchain game. Like, what does that even mean? I mean, right?
It is a little bit. I've had to do some of that at the start in the sort of the early times. I had a lot of investors coming in who'd never played games, so I've had to kind of pivot all over the place in order to do that. And I sort of had to present to them to say, yeah, this is. You have to link your wallet in order to get your items in the first place, because you're going to run a dungeon and you're going to get one at the end. So I had to have that requirement. But in doing so, I do have a virtual account that I credit their items into, and now they can withdraw them to their wallet.
Yeah, I think it's really important here to, some of you that may be watching the video right now may have been already in crypto for quite a few years, in Web3, and you already have some of this experience under your belt on how to use a wallet, how to, transfer both NFTs versus fungible tokens versus actual, cryptocurrency. But obviously for adoption, reaching out, trying to reach out to as many individuals as possible, new gamers into the space, you want to make that onboarding process as easy as you can. So I can completely understand how this would be a fundamental hurdle that needs to be crossed.
So there's a little bit of, you create your email, you then have to link your wallet. Ultimately, I'd like to get rid of that, where you just create your email, or you somehow prove that it's you.
Again, reduce the barriers of entry.
You just continue playing. But beyond that very, very first hurdle of getting the wallet and linking it to your account, you don't have to do anything. You can just continue to play and earn items in your account, and only when you're ready, you can choose to withdraw them.
So you get a wallet, you link it to your account, but beyond that, you've made it easy for players to get involved with your game. Like, there's nothing about it at that point that's complicated or a blocker in any sense.
Exactly,
I mean,
a hurdle.
The usual game mechanics and usual experience.
Let the game exist as its own.
When I first added some of these things, like I first added quests and you could turn in items, I did force people to say, because the items were in your wallet, obviously, I had to send a request to their wallet, and it would say, please send the items to the game, and they'd have to accept it. So that was kind of like the only connection, I guess, to blockchain that they would see. But I've removed all that stuff now. Gas fees are through the roof. People just weren't doing quests. They weren't able to progress. It was basically stopping progress in the game. So I went back virtual again. I went, off chain for a lot of things. And I'm looking forward with Efinity now to actually go back on chain and do that all again cheaply and have it all done on
it's a testament to flexibility, the importance of being able to make changes on the fly
behind the scenes. And I think that's key. And I want to talk more about this, but before we do, your background, super cool. I'm watching you, I'm seeing people walk behind you. And this, for our listeners who
the metaverse
weren't
is here,
able
people.
to attend any of the Venture Beat, that's John. For our listeners who weren't able to attend the Venture Beat Metaverse Summit, Cliff, you provided this background for our CTO and co-founder Vitek Radomski, and he had this, and it was really fun watching. Every time he would talk, there's people in the background. It's like we were hanging out in a metaverse tavern, having a grog. It was super fun. So what is this? Is this part of your game?
Yeah, so this is the tavern that's in the town Talmouth. That's one of the starter towns. In fact, it's the only town you can access at the moment. But yeah, you wander through this.
I guess
tab
that's
all the time.
implying
You
that
go to
there's
your
more
stash
towns
to
to
pick your items
come,
and things,
like
and
the
there's
leaks that
people
we've
sitting
seen in
around
the
doing
Discord.
things. So I thought it'd be kind of fun for us to, be sitting there, and his video was of the other side, and there was an Enjin logo on the fireplace and that kind of thing. And there's two guys having an intense discussion behind him the whole time. So yeah, it was just a bit of fun to be in the world. Yeah,
That's
I think
awesome.
it turned out well.
So okay, let's get back, because part of that conversation. So I was moderating this roundtable. We were talking about some of the pretty negative sentiment towards NFTs, and in my
there's been a lot of it lately.
Dialogue, I talked about maybe not focusing on the NFT specifically, but focusing more on one's digital avatar, digital identity, because I think that if you unlock the meaning of that, the utility of that, the purpose of that, NFTs can start to make a lot more sense. Right. So you had some thoughts. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean,
let's listen to Cliff's thoughts real quick. Then we're going to give you my opinion right here.
Now on NFTs are just JPEGs, and for some reason, people have made this association that an NFT is simply a JPEG, that they can steal it essentially by right-clicking and saving it.
Yeah,
and that's all it is. For some reason there seems to be this disconnect. They don't want to go any further than that. They love just riding on that, saying that every time you mint an NFT, it burns a forest and that kind of thing. Like, it's funny things to say, but it's not true.
Yeah.
But this is a big deal. This is a big deal because companies like Valve they've taken steps to ban NFTs from the Steam platform.
Okay, hold on, right here. So important thing to note here, right? When we're talking about the idea of the backlash against NFTs, to be quite honest, I mean, the point of the matter straight is that these items and this technology is so new, right? We're coming across a group of people that are seeing it or being bombarded with it, and not quite fully understanding it, and rightfully so, right? It's one of those things that education is extremely important, as you all know. But I'm firmly in the camp that you should be, if you really want to teach someone something, it's show, don't tell, at least when it comes to crypto games. If you're really wanting, if you're able to build a very unique experience that is entertaining, that drives players to return to these digital worlds, they're gonna be able to see the value of the entertainment and or of the items that they own, and it'll speak for itself. Honestly, being able to explain to someone what the potentials NFTs have is a nearly impossible task because of the fact that it's so new and that it's growing so fast. It changes every day. I think it's going to be much easier to just show players what they can be like in game by allowing them to experiment with them the same way that gamers have experienced with all different types of genres in the past. I think this is simply going to be another genre inside the video game industry to start.
That's another thing. You've got to realize, why would they ban a JPEG? It's because it's not just a JPEG.
Exactly. Why would Valve ban a JPEG?
Ownership for something. And right now, sure, I can go and buy some hats on Team Fortress 2 and resell them in their
That's a very, very good point.
But ultimately, if they decide to ban me, or someone files too many reports against my account or something like that, and it gets removed, and I have no access, I've lost all that. Like, any investment I had in that is gone. Right. And while they've set up a virtual marketplace, it's less accountable. Like, you can't see what goes on. You can't see that, user X sent an item to user Y on this particular date, or that this particular item maybe was used by a particular streamer on their live stream on the
it's an evolution
of their stream, like, that kind of thing. So I think, there's actually the whole NFT idea about it just being JPEGs seems to be a little misguided. And there's ideas that people are coming up with. Like, for some reason, I came up with one this morning. I was like,
people were trying to rationalize the idea of what a NFT can be, and yeah, of course, a lot of people are going to be coming to the wrong conclusions until they get to actually experience it themselves. And to go back on the idea of Valve and banning NFT games, like, Cliff here made a really good point. The evolution of NFTs within video games, like, is a direct competition to how a certain segment, not only of the industry or a genre of the industry, but also of Valve's pocketbooks, right? Like the way Cliff was mentioning about, the selling of party hats, the selling of, Valve collectibles, their trading cards, all of these items. These are things that Valve's already monetizing off of. When I heard the news about Valve's banning of NFTs, for me, it was, I didn't exactly jump on the bandwagon that a lot of other people did. To me, it was just screaming a combination of, hey, we don't completely understand this, and hey, they're going to have different, regulatory agencies that they have to respond to, and two, if they do understand it a bit or what it's attempting to do, regardless if it's achieved it yet, then it's a direct competition to what they're doing. So of course they wouldn't want to do that. They wouldn't simply want to allow that to occur without them doing research. And yeah, don't be surprised if we're going to see Valve come out with their own NFT marketplace and/or Web3 adaptation into the Steam marketplace over the next few years.
For like this podcast, there's so much deep fakes, video, audio, all that kind of thing. What if at the start of this stream, an NFT was minted, like a record was minted or saved on the blockchain, which linked to the audio being recorded in here, so you could listen to it in either real time or play it back straight away. Like if you were a few minutes late, you could listen to the old stuff. Yeah. And then that record would be saved. And so if someone quotes something and says, oh, Cliff said this at some particular point in time, you can go back and actually watch it yourself or listen to it yourself. And it's proved because the NFT was minted at that particular time. Whether it's an NFT or not, it's just a record or something like that, like a public record that's saved. You could have multiple, everyone watching could have received.
This is part of the complexity.
One goes into like a museum or an archival process or something like that, where you can actually go back to prove. I don't know, like just stuff like that. Like that's a cool idea. That.
Yeah. See, that's exactly the thing. There's so many ideas of the way that NFTs can be used. How I can understand when you're trying to explain what an NFT can be to someone, how they will not be able to quickly understand it without hours and hours of research at this point in time. The hope in the near future is that that translation will be made easier and easier and easier. And it's my personal opinion that video games are going to be the avenue to be able to get that information across.
Kind of stuff with centralized. Some guy runs a server or some company runs a server.
Right.
And then if they decide, this is boring, it's not making us any money, we'll just shut it down and it's gone. Like at least with blockchain, it remains.
Well, let's go back to just gaming specifically as a use case, because that's where a lot of the Reddit and subreddit threads are happening, and there's a lot of passionate discourse on both sides. We're hanging out in that tavern behind you, okay? This is your opportunity. Share with our audience, our listeners. We're hanging out in your tavern. We're the gamer who says no. Like, there's no way this is a helpful added value to any game, let alone my game. I want the usual game mechanics. Don't change anything. What do you say to that? What do you say to that person?
Well, I mean, look, that's why I created Lost Relics, right? I've got
come and try the game, exactly. Like, show, don't tell.
You can earn, you can resell. You can't do that with a Fortnite skin that you buy. You can't do that with a Diablo skin and that weapon and item and that kind of thing.
By the way, that you buy from whom?
Well, from other players or from me. Yeah, I mean, now, Fortnite, you can just buy it from Epic, right? You can't buy it from Epic.
That's right. And that's another argument, by the way.
Well, they also have no supply, I think. Like, they released a skin, right? They had so much, they copped a lot of flack about this. They did, I think it was the skeleton skin. There was an early skeleton skin released, and I think it was all for season 1. A bunch of people got it. And then I think later, season 3, maybe like that, they then released it again in the store. And these people from season 1 were extremely upset because they were there and they were using it as a token to say, hey, I was there then.
Exactly.
And so they had to scramble, and they ended up giving the people who bought the first version a purple version so that it
a unique color.
Different,
Yeah, I mean,
like it's like at least with blockchain, you can see, you can go, hey, look, they're selling the skeleton skin. There's 1,000 of them. I know there'll never be more than 1,000 of them. And you have, the provability there for that. So that's amazing for a gamer because of the value, and you don't have to worry about them trying to change it. I mean, people will argue, they can make a copy of it and they can put the same attributes on or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, but then it's the copy. Like, you can see that it's different. You know that it's not one of the originals. And if they do that, obviously you probably don't want to keep playing their game or participating in their ecosystem.
Yeah, and it's really important here because another argument that we also hear with a lot of specifically video game journalists is we hear the argument of that, like, gaming NFTs are a solution in search of a problem. But the truth of the matter is these problems exist. These are the problems that exist in traditional games. Like, this is happening in the gaming industry. Now, these are unique cases. Cliff brings up a really good point here about what happened in Fortnite, but it's happening in other places too. I would easily make the argument that the Diablo 3 marketplace was a problem that this type of technology can solve. But regardless, the whole point is that there are problems right now that exist prior to the invention of NFTs. And now this evolution is something that will be able to push it further. I'd also like to note that to be quite honest, there is a lot of backlash online about NFTs and about gaming. And, when I see these comments, I understand, look, especially when there's, prior to releases like major games that are coming out, like Elden Ring or Final Fantasy or whatnot. Like, prior to these games releasing, this argument really is just a difference between, in my opinion, it's just a loud vocal minority of gamers all around the world that have access to social media and that are sharing their opinions. When you look at it, 75% of all of those comments are coming from a Western individual, Western mindset, from a game design perspective or from a gameplay perspective. It reminds me so much of when the free to play genre started to become more and more of a thing. It was this idea that was propagated by Eastern development and with Eastern audiences that was making its way over to the West, and we had the exact same arguments. We had the arguments about get these microtransactions out of my game. Like, I don't want them here. This honestly, what it seems like to me is the same argument replaying all over again with a new item at the focal point of, in this case, being Web3 technology. And we're seeing this large vocal community, but also a minority. When you look at actually the video game industry, more than 50% of gamers and revenue is being generated, in the East versus the West. But in terms of online presence, video game journalism, and news coverage, that's, a majority position being held in the West. So you're having these different ideas, and frankly, we have 2.7 billion gamers in the world. There's no way that we're going to be having, one particular genre. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the genres of video games start to explode in the next few years, because now all these different countries across the world and player bases across the world are starting to connect. We're seeing it in games like Lost Relics. We're seeing it in games like Mir 4, where we have, barriers that our players are crossing, whether it's language barriers or gameplay barriers or whatnot. And I just think that we're going to be seeing a lot more of it into the future. So I wouldn't put too much weight on the vocal community right now online. Again, I think it goes back to show, don't tell. Create a great game that can show the benefits. Players will try it out. They'll give their own opinions, and if the player base deems it to be an entertaining feature, they'll continue to play the game, and the genre will grow slowly over time.
Right.
So I mean, it also changes it. Like, from a gamer's perspective, you can invest all your time into playing a game, and forget about like that blockchain is there and you can make money and all that.
That's another big one I want to bring up too. Investment by players.
Hundreds of hours, and at the end of it, you go, oh, you know what? It's been like 3 years playing this. I'm kind of done.
I think this is the clip from the very beginning.
I'm just going to leave. What about if there was also an option for you to say, well, I've amassed like a lot of stuff. why can't I just sell that? Right now, you can't in any of the other games, unless maybe there's a black market or something where you're open to fraud and that kind of stuff. But, if there was a way to do that, like, why is that a bad thing?
Right. And
exactly. And not only why is it a bad thing, but like I would put the argument out there that granted, so I started a professional gaming career in 2006 when MLG was taking off, specifically playing Halo 2 on my end. And with all of this, what I've noticed as this trend has been growing is that for the longest time, the video game industry, the spoils have been going to the largest games in the industry, and the money has been flowing up. Right. And ever since, honestly, what I experienced in 2006 was gamers investing not only their time, but their skills and their, financial resources to participate in this type of growing economy, with the idea here that they might be able to earn something, whether that's through winnings or creating teams or brands. And as time progresses, that base of the industry continues to grow and grow. And I think that's what we're starting to see now, because players now have the direct option to invest into these games, that they're playing.
So just to stop you there, I love this. And I would ask you, who has amassed all of that stuff?
That's exactly what I just said.
Because all of us right now have actual digital identities. We have them now. They're just
the metaverse is now
within walled gardens. So the answer to that is, well, you have, but it's locked. It's going to forever be locked within that game. Right?
That's right. Yeah. I mean,
so what are we asking? What's the passionate cry of the metaverse? It's that we would see these walls fall down.
You don't even need
the digital identity that you and I have that already exists is able to walk outside of the game that we've been living in, trapped in, and be able to go play that other places, owning what we've collected there.
I mean, I would also like to make the argument here that these walls don't necessarily need to be tumbling down. Like when granted, I'm a CPA, so I'm coming from a business perspective. But when I hear the terms of the walls falling down, I think of destruction. I'm thinking of the idea that a lot of indie developers, a lot of AAA developers, a lot of the gaming industry in this disruption will not be able to survive the change, because there will be many that fight against it. And there will be still segments. They're not going to completely go away. But with the idea of walls tumbling down, I would put forward the metaphor of, rather than the walls coming tumbling down, let's just create openings in the wall. Let's just create bridges and gates that can be open to allow free players and commerce to come back and forth. Let players have the power to choose what ecosystem they want to be in, regardless, even if it is traditional gaming. That is not going to go away anytime soon. Even though if it's, threatened by disruption, I think the easier you can make the transition for the entire industry. I mean, you can look at it like this. If you want to assume that this is something that's dying, like if it's the Titanic sinking, you want to have as much time as you can to get people on the boats, to get them over, to this new space, to this new environment. And you want to do that slowly and cautiously. You don't want to have mass panic and disruption, if possible. But we got to just watch how it all plays out.
Right? Nothing really changes. You have better accountability, better transparency, better visibility, and more unlimited opportunities. It's beautiful. It's amazing.
Yeah, 100%. I don't understand the negativity around it. I've heard things like they're saying, this is just another way to do microtransactions. It's like, well, no, I mean, you do that already. We've already got Fortnite skins. You can buy them. You just can't resell them. But now with this, you can resell them if you want to, because it's yours. It's not on their server. They haven't restricted you. They're not following whatever the protocols that they need to. So yeah, I think it requires a lot more research. Yeah.
It does. But I think part of the problem is messaging. It really is. What is it? What is an NFT?
I don't think you need a message. I mean, you do need a message, but show.
A lot of people don't even know what they are still. What is an NFT? Establish that basis. What is a digital identity? Oh, I already have one. Establish that basis. Where do those two things intersect? And what does the future of that actually look like? Like, this is messaging that every company on the planet should be considering right now. How do we responsibly and thoughtfully communicate what these elements are? What is this? And how do we bring our players, our communities into this new world and do it in a way that builds legacy and is positive and constructive? I mean, that's to me, that's where things need to go.
You know, I mean, hey, he's the chief operating officer, so I'm sure, you know, messaging is as important. You know, I try to, you know, put myself in his shoes. I'm sure messaging and especially for an early developing company, like, you want to be able to put your vision out there and have it something to be easily understandable. I also kind of think that, again, I just think that the proof will be in the pudding. One of these days, a massive game is going to come out that drives players to it, that has these new features. And then, you know, we've kind of already seen what Axie has done. We've seen the impact it's had. Now we're looking for round two. What's the next iteration of it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that whole identity thing that you sort of touched on there, you know, as a quick example, you could think of your identity as maybe your wallet holding it, and then all the items and everything in it are the NFTs. Like, NFTs could be items, for example.
I mean, if you look at it like that, like our identities right now are Facebook
other games
accounts, Google accounts.
Anyway, yeah. just quick.
That you use to log in everywhere.
Okay, so we've talked about the gamer and but I want to transition, because you're a game developer as well as a gamer. So what's the biggest piece of advice you'd give to a game developer who's interested in building with NFTs?
I mean, the advice I'd give today is probably different to what I would have given like a year, 2, 3 years. Like, it changes over time. Mm-hmm. Today, it's interesting because there's so much hype around JPEGs, and I hear a lot of people talking about that they want to create, you know, profile picture projects where they have a profile picture and then they realize that there's not much utility behind that, so they're trying to think of what they can add for that. Mm-hmm. Probably something that I guess I could say is you need to probably listen to community, build your community up around you, and start working with them.
Especially because we're so early on.
Be able to pivot quickly,
flexibility,
and be able to make decisions based on the state. Like, this space moves so quickly. It's like when we talked about the Ethereum fees. We got hit with the fees, and everyone's screaming out like, I can't do quests, I can't do all this sort of stuff. So I think it was in the span of a couple of days, I ended up having to pivot and change what I was doing, plan it out, and then release it over a week so that people could do all this stuff virtually. Like, if you're not quick to do that kind of stuff, you can get left behind. There's a lot of criticism, there's a lot of greed and that kind of thing. So you've kind of got to rise above that sort of thing, if you can, and surround yourself with positive people, because it's that human negativity bias that can get you down in this sort of thing.
Mental toughness, man. It's a hard thing to do in any business.
Have a good vision with your project, and just keep pushing.
Yeah, I love that, man. Thank you for that.
Keep pushing.
And that's a really good, I think, position and kind of clarion call for those game developers who are looking to use engine tools or start building on the blockchain. I think that's really good, helpful, practical advice. Just transitioning again, like, we've talked about NFTs, we've talked about building with NFTs, but what about the metaverse? Everyone has different definitions of what the metaverse is, and it's a buzzword. You hear it all the time. I've heard 2021 was the year of the NFT, 2022 is the year of the metaverse. How do you define it? Where do you see all of this going?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's like one of the definitions of the metaverse is that it's like a collection of physical and digital experiences that seamlessly overlap and integrate. And you can imagine, I don't think it's going to fit in 1 year, and it's certainly not going to be finished in 1 year.
No way.
People are going to make attempts. You know, different companies are making attempts at building out the metaverse.
I'm not sure it's ever going to actually be finished.
Definition of what it might be. No one truly knows. It'll kind of form itself, and that's kind of almost like the beauty of it, because there's all these separate people working on this one concept that they're kind of surrounded by. But I could imagine, like, it's not going to just be on your computer screen or just on your mobile screen. If we're kind of melding real world and digital experiences. Like, quick example, you buy a Louis Vuitton handbag, you get the physical item and you get the NFT item to prove that you bought it, so that you can use that in your digital space and in your physical space. So that's one way of doing it, and like another way is melding the visions. So AR and VR. If it's AR, you can kind of walk around and you'll see
XR,
augmented reality,
extended reality.
And like, while there's pros and cons for all kinds of things, if we don't sort of give us time to build and to come up with ideas and test things and prototype things and that kind of thing, then what even is the point of anything? Like, you'll never invent anything, you'll never change anything, you'll never do anything if you just constantly criticize something and never come up with anything and never try and build anything. So I don't really know where it's going to go, but I imagine we're going to have some crossovers there. The world that I'm building in Lost Relics will kind of be its own world. And I imagine initially, through supporting other projects on the multiverse. So for example, through Enjin, I can support other Enjin projects, and I can give value to their items within Lost Relics and vice versa. I imagine that it will initially just be that. So we'll be supporting each other's items, and maybe there'll be an easy way to move between the games or the universes or whatever. Maybe not visually, but through your items. So you're kind of switching multiverses through your items. You're using your same sword in this game and that game and that game. Yeah. And then later on, it could be melded, like I said, with AR and VR and that kind of thing. So I don't know. I mean, it's definitely going to be an interesting time. I haven't had too much time to think about and to sort of ponder that kind of stuff, because I'm just so wrapped up in building out the Lost Relics world that,
Well, thank you for
I think he hit the nail on the head there, and just to give you my idea in terms of what I'm thinking the metaverse is, when I'm doing all this research and looking at all these different projects, like the way I visualize it is like the metaverse is an online digital society that is building out in equivalent, like using the same type of perspective when we look back at history as the way early civilizations started to form. The only difference is it being digital. So when I think of the metaverse, I think of there's these different projects all across the metaverse, whether it's games like Lost Relics or Axie, whether it's profile picture projects like Bored Ape Yacht Club, or whether it's financial systems and communities like Uniswap. Like, I see all of these as different areas, different cities on the map. And all of these cities right now are all focused on surviving. They're all focused on benefiting or enlarging the amount of protection of the users that are within these cities. If I imagine that I would be setting up a city by myself, the first thing that would happen is that we would need to have a reason to bring people over to settle in this new city. Then we would need to set up ways to be able to protect them and also be able to help this economy grow, provide basic services. All of these different games and all these different platforms are doing the same thing. They have their initial communities, they have their initial customers, and their main goal right now is offering some type of protection to make these customers and these metaverse participants feel safe in these different communities. That can look 100 different ways depending on the project. The next iteration, I think, of what the metaverse will become will be the idea of building bridges between these communities. And we're seeing it now, the way that the different blockchain games have interoperability with different DeFi platforms. You're linking two communities that can then benefit and trade amongst each other. If we take it back to the original example, one community can be growing wheat while another one is focusing on cattle. And both communities are now able to thrive further and develop further because they're able to share these resources amongst themselves. Lost Relics is continuously building out, its own metaverse with its own community. And like Cliff just said, the way that he kind of sees the future of the metaverse growing is this idea of, interoperability down the road with other developers. Again, the idea being that they have their own communities that will somehow, ideally, be able to benefit from an interaction with this community, and so on and so forth. So that's my perspective. I look at it like early digital settlement, inside a digital world, and the key will be, all of these cities be getting to interact with themselves.
It'd be interesting.
No, I think
Very
interesting. That's good. I think it's good. Well, let's get back to Lost Relics. So you've mentioned a few times Efinity, okay? Which is Enjin's next generation blockchain to facilitate all NFT transactions, and there's massive upside to Efinity. You plan to adopt Efinity. You've said that Efinity will, quote, bring a new era of NFTs to the world, uniting all in a decentralized future where ownership and collaboration rule. I want you to elaborate on that. That is extremely well said.
I think what kind of a little bit about what I was talking about before with projects collaborating with each other, or even not. Like, I could add support for projects' items without them giving me permission or whatever, because it's publicly there on the blockchain. While I can't use their assets because I don't have access to them unless they've given me access. I can still add some sort of value to them within my project, be that through utility or granting access to something. Like, let's say there was a project that was rewarded to people who donated to a cause. And then I decided, I want to support the people who donated. And I can look at the blockchain records for that and say, I'm going to give all these people access to a special tavern or something like that in the game. Then I can choose to do that on my own, or I can choose to do that as a collaboration with someone. And I kind of feel that the decentralized and the collaborative ability that it kind of brings is much easier. Like, people say, you can just someone can create a server and you can call an API and you can do all this without blockchain. It's like, yeah, but someone's maintaining that. Someone is potentially going to take that down, or someone can modify that and that kind of thing. And just the pros that the blockchain give you allow for a much smoother experience. And in Efinity, removing all those fees that we have at the moment right now with Ethereum, like Ethereum was great back 3 years ago, 1 gwei for everything, a couple of cents. But with Efinity, removing that and having a bunch of features that support, onboarding new people. Like, for example, one of the features that I'm looking forward to is the discrete wallets. So right now, where I'm forcing people during the login process to create a wallet so I can send them their items, I instead create a discrete wallet for them, and I would deposit the items that they win straight into that for them. When they're ready, they can then choose to send the items out to a wallet that they actually own, instead of forcing them through that whole process at the start.
Yeah, let players make that decision slowly over time as they learn. For me,
just that along with, there's a few other dynamics in Efinity that I think I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. What does your community have to look forward to in the coming months on the Lost Relics roadmap?
I'm pretty, elusive about revealing a lot of that stuff. And the reason for that is, when I've mentioned things in the past, people seem to hold me to them very well. So I say, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to release this. Something comes up, the Ethereum fees go through the roof, and I have to pivot and do something else. And they're like, what about this thing? You promised us that, several weeks to this hour, to this minute, that sort of thing. So I tend not to mention too much stuff, but little tidbits, I guess, is I've been actively working on new adventures. So they are generated differently. They're generated more interestingly.
It sounds like the next big update that's probably going to be coming.
Looking at doing things like multiplayer, so PvP and co-op. as
Which,
well as
big reveal there. If you go check out my previous video, the impromptu discussion live interview with Cliff and Spizzo that is posted on the chat. Cliff did reveal some breaking information that he is hoping that in the next 2 to 3 patches that the co-op arena will be available for players to play. So there's a little bit of extra information that you get if you follow the Strike Team. Again, hit that sub button if you haven't already, but let's go ahead and continue on with the video.
some expansion around pets, which you currently have. So you can
Pet progression.
Purchase a pet, and at the moment they just help you on their adventures.
People love their
smashing
pets
crates and looking for gold and bonuses. Be looking at actually doing combat with them as well, and a way for you to progress them as blockchain objects.
Progress them as blockchain objects.
A little bit of a sneak peek.
So the progression is blockchain related.
We're going to hold you.
So maybe we're talking about rarity type of.
Yeah, not next week though.
Rarity type of.
So next week.
Oh God.
All right, for our listeners who are not familiar with Lost Relics, who are intrigued, thank you for pulling up those gameplay clips. How can someone get involved in the project?
Desert
so
map,
you can just visit lostrelics.io and you can create an account. Now, right now, as you know, there's a wait list, and the reason that was put in place was actually to protect the limited supply of items. So because all of the items, all the blockchain items in the game are limited in supply, if there was, say, 1,000 swords and there was 10,000 people jumping into adventures for them, they'd all be out of stock pretty quick. So I'm kind of been controlling the population a little bit just to make sure that they're not all out of supply while I'm still building. The game, is under active development. But if people sign up and they don't want to wait on the wait list, they can purchase a pendant. And that was a request by my community. They said, we don't want you to fully lock it off. Can you at least let us, or those of us who want to jump the queue, pay you something in order to support the game? So I obliged and opened that up. So, if you're really interested in it, you can jump in. There's been quite a lot of people doing that and just skipping the queue in order to play.
Okay.
And then just getting involved. Like, you can join Telegram and Discord. All the links are in the footer on the website on lostrelics.io. And yeah, you can just jump in and participate with the community, where everyone's pretty friendly. The chat in game is usually pretty lively, and if not, there's also people in Discord and Telegram. If you're a full-on gamer, you'll probably be pretty familiar with Discord.
Define lively.
There's lots of conversations going on. Like I jump in every now and then, and they'll be talking about
like he jumped in on the previous
about the game, sometimes about the weather,
live
sometimes
stream
about random blockchain things, new projects, all kind of things. So I believe sometimes there's some arguments around which items are the best and effects and how they work, and there's a lot of hidden secrets and meanings and that kind of thing in the lore in the items, so in the descriptions and stuff. And in the future, that kind of a thing will help people locate rare items before anyone else.
Cliff, you've done an amazing job.
Cheers.
Just, being at Enjin and just watching your journey. I just want to say personally, like how grateful we are to have you as an Enjin adopter. Just watching this kind of rotate, you've done a tremendous job building this out. And for those of you who don't know, Cliff is a one-man team. Like this is your dream, and like, this is incredible.
I do get criticized for being such a small team. I do have a couple of helpers now with doing design and moderation on that. But I kind of taking the challenge on myself. People are saying, oh, you need to hire a team of like 100 more people. It's like, yeah, I could, but there's a lot of things that go along with that. The slowing down of processes, the capital that's required, the ongoing commitments and stuff, and red tape and other stuff. So it's not easy. Like, you can't just snap your fingers and put a team together. I originally envisioned hiring a lot of people that I worked with in the games industry, but with this negativity around NFTs and other things, a lot of them are stepping back from it and saying, nope, don't want to be involved, don't want to have anything to do with it. And it's odd because they're not even critically looking at it either. Like, in a way, they're just listening to the hype and going, oh no, that's a scam, that's a pyramid scheme or whatever, and not really interested. So I mean, I'm happy with it. Like, I'm happy with the progress where it's going.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to also add there that going back into the end of 2021, like around October, November, like from my personal perspective, when I was looking at like different investments and how the metaverse was growing, I was under the assumption that the very next thing that was going to happen was the onboarding of large corporations and or AAA developers into the blockchain space. You know, the backlash that had occurred online on Twitter and on, YouTube or whatnot, seems to have stalled that. So, from an evaluation standpoint, it does feel like the early crypto adopters, developers, and projects that are continuing to progress into the future now have the added benefit of additional time to iterate on their project, and gain a further lead before larger players come into the space. And remember, it all comes down to education. It doesn't really matter if you're an individual, or a huge team, or a AAA, multinational corporation. At the same, all the participants in these different projects are going to have to learn how this ecosystem works. The do's and the don'ts, and that takes time. The longer that the games from 2019, 2020, 2021 have to iterate, the more chances for success. So, I look at it as a short-term bullish outlook on indie game development in Web3 technology.
It's not the worst and it's not the best, but I find, going really well.
I'm going to say it here for our community now, on record, give it a year.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see unbelievable steps in the right direction in the next year. Definitely. All right. Cliff, thank you so much for joining me, man. I have one final question for you. I like to ask this at the end of every podcast episode. What's one thought-provoking idea that you'd like to leave our audience with?
Ooh.
All right. Well, I'd probably say, when Efinity launches, its ability to pull in all the other NFTs from all other chains onto Efinity, by way of like placing the highest winning bid on that NFT. Imagine what will happen to the NFT ecosystem.
That's a good one. I'll do a little play.
That's just a thought-provoking think about. I'm not going to answer
it. I'll go ahead and play off of that too. I don't know if that individual, feature with Efinity is going to be a success, right? To me, it sounds like a marketing tool that's going to be able to use to foster early adoption. But I don't think it's something that could last forever. I could be wrong. But I will play off of that. My thought-provoking idea would be, what does it mean now that under the Efinity blockchain, that valuations for NFTs will be present at all times? That's my thought-provoking idea, because what comes to my mind is the idea that, hey, if we know what NFTs are worth, that means a whole group of new businesses, whether it's DeFi, whether it's collaborations, whether it's smart contract creations, insurance, rentals, lending, it means all of it's possible now if we have valuations that are understandable rather than left up in the ether. But that's mine.
I just had many very positive thoughts.
Good.
Cliff, you're awesome, man. So appreciate you taking a few minutes hanging out with me here in the Enjin Room. For our listeners, go check out Lost Relics. Amazing game. Cliff, cheers, my friend, and keep up the good work.
Thanks, Caleb. Looking forward to Efinity in the future.
And there you go, people. That's going to go ahead and put a close on the video for today. I think it was a good, successful one. We got to hear a lot about Lost Relics, about Enjin, about Efinity. I gave you my personal perspectives here on what I thought the future of the metaverse could hold from, the Strike Team Games perspective. Again, I hope you all enjoyed it. We're going to be doing a lot more of these covering the metaverse going into the future. If you enjoyed the video, do me a favor, click that thumbs up button and give me a subscribe. Next steps on the channel, we're looking to get to 1,000 subscribers so that we can go ahead and take those next steps forward and interact with the community. So I appreciate all of y'all's feedback. Go ahead and leave a comment down below. I will catch y'all next time. Peace out.